let's do an event. And to get started, I want to welcome Avitus B. Carle to our virtual stage and ask if your book is handy, if you might read us a little sampling of what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the night. And in a little bit, I'll introduce our moderator for the evening. But for now, Avitus, I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Zach, and thank you everyone for coming. I will be reading a few stories from my debut flash fiction collection, These Worn Bodies. Yay. And yeah, let's just get right to it. So, as you might have heard, as some of you might have heard, I recently had a story accepted for Best Small Fictions 2025, which is super exciting. And I'm so excited to be with so many familiar authors in that upcoming anthology. And the story that got accepted takes place in a diner. And for some reason, I went through a whole phase with diners and the apocalypse. And so I'll be reading, which is in this collection, At the Only Friendlies Open When the World Ends. And this one wasn't accepted for Best Small Fictions, but it's along the same vein as the one that was. At the Only Friendlies Open When the World Ends, the fries arrive soggy but crimped. The smell of grease lingers in the red leather seats that suction to exposed skin. The waitresses wear red shirts with exaggerated triangle collars, say, "Welcome to Friendlies," with signature smiles, cover the big F for Friendlies on the back wall with their final paychecks, play hopscotch on brown-tiled floors, balance black trays on their shoulders, carrying the mushroom cheese mania burger, the sriracha burger, a serving of buffalo mac and cheese. At the only friendlies open when the world ends, no one talks about the fires, how the sky is always red, how their lungs burn and everything tastes like lead dipped in Tabasco. Nobody talks about how the children can't stop coughing, how the women blister, how the men are gone, how someone or everyone thinks there's still time to try again to save the world, or maybe time to save themselves. At the only friendlies open when the world ends, a woman reenacts her first date with a crash test dummy, pretending he is the man she should have married. She orders the clown sundae. He orders one monster sundae with extra horns made of Reese's peanut butter cups split in two. Their waitress smiles that signature smile, asks, "Will that be all?" The woman nods, offers to pay the waitress in cash, says, "Could you hurry? We've got somewhere else to be." The waitress nods, but leaves the money so the woman takes it instead. She folds one bill into a paper crane, the other into a heart. At the only friendlies open when the world ends, a woman kisses a dummy, pretending he is the man she should have married while reenacting her first date. She tastes peanut butter and vanilla on his tongue, sits back and whispers, "Delicious." Okay, thank you. So I have another micro for you. It's called A Girl Called Boy. We call her boy when she shoots spit from the side of her mouth, drowning an entire ant colony. We call her boy when she's up to bat. Boy on strike one. Boy, strike two. Come on, show me something, the pitcher says, mid-jerking air between his legs, and we shout, "Boy, please," and hold on to our braids because boy, when she cracks that bat against that ball's ass, it zeroes in on that pitcher boy. We call her boy when we ask her to sleep over. Boy, when our mamas say, "Who?" We tell them she's a girl and they ask if we're sure, and honestly, some of us aren't. We watch her use the girls' bathroom, sing in the girls' choir, become our comrade when it's girls versus boys in the gym. We call her boy when we invite her to sleep over, boy while we do our nails, our lips, our hair. You ready, boy? We take turns gripping somebody's daddy's razor, electric boy, smooth edges boy, as close as you can, boy. This is your dare, boy, and we take turns carving shooting stars into her head. We trace them with our fingernails as proof of our fine work. We call her boy when we pull her between us, legs crossed, lips glossed in popcorn butter and pepperoni pizza grease. Ask her if she's ever kissed a boy. This girl we call boy gets real shy, gets real quiet, so we promise to teach her how. We open a bag of Twizzlers, bite one end and offer her the other. Kiss us, boy. And we each wait our turn as she bites and bites and bites. We call her boy when she deepens her voice, boy when she binds her breasts, boy when she keeps her head shaved close, wears clothes that sag, disappears into the boys' bathroom, boy when she petitions to play football, boy when she wears a suit to prom. We call her boy when she asks each of us to dance, grasps our hands, tell us all the ways we're beautiful while we inhale her cologne, hazel-eyed beauty, intelligent, sweetheart, funny as hell beauty. You smell like an apple pie, vanilla, crawdads, and Old Bay beauty. Boy, you crazy, we say, but we laugh and forget about those other boys. Boys who grab us, who tear us, who hurt us for fun. Those old boys and young boys. Boys we knew, boys we don't. Boys who heard us say no and boys we thought we loved. Boys who watch us take a turn with her, fist curled, sweat soiling their collars. We call her boy when we confront our teachers. It's not like her to skip school. We call her boy when we text her phone, call her house, throw rocks and sticks and books at her window. Boy when we see her next time on the news. Boy curled up in a trash bag. We call each other, ask, how did this happen? Ask, why didn't we look for our boy? Some of us confront her mother who says she lost her daughter years ago. Boy, we say when the door slams in our face. Boy, as we prepare his funeral. Boy, when we stand up and tell our stories. Boy, who many of us will remember as our first boy, our only boy, perhaps the best boy we'll ever know. Thank you. And then finally, I thought I'd end with one of the older stories in the collection called These Worn Bodies. Dry leaves save the fire, suckling on branches stained with pine sap from dying. Maddie takes an axe to one of Mistress Whitaker's good chairs and feeds the pieces to the flame, careful the fire doesn't choke. She used to love the smell of burning pine and maple until her daddy was sent down the road to chop lumber for a neighbor who claimed the wood was too wet to burn. Behind closed eyes, Maddie only sees the body of her daddy swinging from barren branches, toes tipping over dried, curling leaves. She keeps a bit of her daddy and mama in the pocket of her apron tied around the layers of clothes she wears to keep the winter chill from finding her skin. Strips of cloth from her parents' clothes wrap around rocks the Whitakers won't miss. Maddie rubs her thumb over the tattered remains of her daddy, joining Mistress Whitaker outside on the porch for what she keeps in her mind, the last time. The big house could burn behind her, and Mistress Whitaker's eyes would never leave the black iron gate wrapping around Goodnight Plantation. She insists the house remain warm for when they return, the word dying a little more in Mistress Whitaker's throat with each passing day. The women keep watch over the men in gray uniforms beyond the gate, wrinkled and hunched, covered in bloody bandages with tongues too caught up in what they've seen to speak. Maddie has never seen so many men missing so much of themselves. However, none of these warm bodies belongs to Master Whitaker, the two Whitaker boys, or Maddie's husband Solomon, even the ones dangling from wooden carts. Still, Mistress Whitaker has Maddie search them all. Slaves used to drift in the opposite direction in the early days, careful to avoid the soldiers. Some carried tattered clothes, others clung to silver spoons, pocket watches, or other objects dead men won't miss, but might help the living when scrounging for food later on. Mistress Whitaker spits on the porch planks, their white paint peeling, every time something glistens in the hands of a slave. Though those objects do look good in the hands of free men. Maddie thinks on her own stash wrapped in one of the Whitaker boys' sheets tucked in the roots of a tree just beyond the gate. Every morning before Mistress Whitaker stirs, she walks to her stash to make sure it's there, touches the bits of silverware polished by her mama, empty picture frames, pins, and other things the soldiers deem too useless to take during one of their raids. She moves these stolen pieces a little farther every day. With every sunrise, Maddie takes another step farther from good night until her heart stills enough for her body to keep going. Have Hadley start dinner, and Maddie's thoughts return to Mistress Whitaker, a small woman who whistles when she talks because a gap in her teeth she used to shield with a fan, no matter the season, until a soldier ripped it away from her. Hadley's gone, miss. Then get Sarah. Also gone. The tip of Maddie's tongue is pricking the roof of her mouth by the time she realizes the tone she's let slip. Hazel eyes that turn gold when the light hits them right stare up at her with such force. Maddie takes a step back and lowers her head. You watch how you speak to me, girl. Yes, mistress. Maddie caresses her mama's bit of cloth in her apron pocket. Set them right. Most times, Mistress Whitaker's words sound like the end of a thought, though Maddie remembers the woman's been known to carry on conversations with the air or her reflection. I should. Maddie swallows the rest. Hadley ran off with the first black man she saw walking, Sarah not too far behind with a baby on her hip. Maddie thought about joining them but didn't want to leave the rocks of her parents behind. After she grabbed them, Hadley and Sarah were nowhere to be found, and even in a crowd, Maddie couldn't bring herself to step off Whitaker land without papers. Solomon. There's a smile itching at Mistress Whitaker's lips as she rises from her seat. She spent so many days sitting, Maddie forgets they stand eye to eye with each other. The two women spend some time in the quiet, Maddie grasping her parents, Mistress Whitaker biting and curling her lips. He'll be on. Maddie wants to believe these words as they echo in her bones. She bites back the other word she wants to say, how Mistress Whitaker never said her husband's name until now. Instead, Maddie allows the force of her anger to move her down the steps. The rocks of her mama and daddy curl next to one another, playfully patting against Maddie's leg. Get back here. Goodnight Plantation swallowed up more lives than Maddie knows, discarded more people than she can hold in her heart, including her mama, caged and carried off without time for a goodbye. Maddie. She has one hand on the black iron gate, the other gripped by Mistress Whitaker. Maddie looks back at the panting woman, brown hair with strands of gray clinging to her red face cracked with wrinkles borrowed by a woman beyond her years. Hazel eyes, now brown like Maddie's, trembling with veins creeping in. They remind Maddie of the lashes swelling on her back. She can feel their bones collide every time Mistress Whitaker tugs at her fingers. She thinks on how Solomon kissed the hand Mistress Whitaker holds, whispering about freedom in the dark before sneaking away to find a blue uniform. Maddie likes the idea of her Solomon waiting for her somewhere in blue. She tears her hand away, listens to the iron gate wail as it swings open. Maddie steps through, grabs her bundle, and gazes at how her feet feel the footsteps of all who've made it this far. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to hear those out loud. And it's my pleasure now to welcome Hannah Grieco, who will be our inquisitor for the evening, our interlocutor. Hannah is the author of the forthcoming collection, First Kicking the Knot, and one of my favorite people. So Hannah, I'm just going to hand off straight to you and step away. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. And thanks all of you for being here. It's like such a thrill to see so many people that I know and I'm missing, because since I left Twitter, I don't see all of you. And it's just a real delight to see your faces and see your names. and even more so to be in conversation with Avitus about this incredible collection. It was such a joy to read. Not always an easy book to read, sometimes very funny, sometimes really hard, always on point, as we all know Avitus B. So I'm thrilled to be here. And thank you for asking me to ask you questions. I love it. So while we go, because this is sort of a craft Q&A and then also just audience Q&A, I have a ton of questions for her, but you all, if you have a question, please pop it in the chat as we go. You don't need to wait. And I'm gonna like just grab questions as they come and sprinkle them in as well. Alrighty, so please feel free to do that. And if I miss it, I think that Zach will probably help me out. So let's just start like we always do, or at least I always do when I'm talking to an author about their incredible book. Avitus, tell us about These Worn Bodies.
Yes. So as you may have noticed, all the characters in the collection are female or female identifying, very femme. And I did that on purpose because I wanted to tell the stories of these characters outside of the norm, so not as their expected roles. So they're more than mothers, they're more than the housewife, they're more than the princess. I have a girl whose mother was a knight and she's becoming a knight, and then I also have a dragon who is a mother just trying to protect her children. So I like stories that have a unique bent to them. I also like that touch of weird, as you'll see in the collection. Like I tell a story from the point of view of a zombie, which is oftentimes definitely not black in fiction. Zombies are normally just like green, but assumed white. There's like not this sense of, oh, the zombie happens to be a minority outside of just being a zombie. And I really like to explore characters of color in different scenarios in these different situations because as a person of color, I oftentimes see myself missing from these stories, especially when I was younger. I was never taught that I could be the princess in the tower because Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and Rapunzel were never my skin tone. And Rapunzel definitely didn't have this hair, like, because ain't nobody touching it and climbing and sticking their boots in it. Like, I still understand why that girl let that prince with his muddy boots climb up her hair. But that's a whole essay in itself. But I'm just saying, like, we have these different experiences. And that's one of my experiences as minority is like, you learn don't touch a black person's hair. And Rapunzel's story is just so far removed from my experience. So in the collection, I seek to explore that as well. Also from different age point of views, because that's also another element we sometimes miss is that stories can be told by different age groups. So I have like young girls. I read a girl called Boy, which is told from like a middle school, high school perspective. I have one told by older characters. So all these characters are in different parts of their life, but they all seek to escape the roles that they are just assumed to play or just further explore these roles that they found themselves in.
Amazing, of course. Thank you so much. This is why you ask instead of introduce a book. It's always better this way. It's incredible. I'm super excited to talk about Flash tonight because
Yes.
there's lots of us in the audience here who write Flash. And then the reality is that many writers and almost all readers don't really know what Flash is unless they're writing Flash themselves. So this is a Flash collection, which is even more rare, right?
Mhm.
Like everyone will see the occasional Flash piece if they're just a reader outside the lit mag world, like they'll see it in the New Yorker. So they know it exists, but they don't really get it. Here we have a book, a really profound collection of Flash. So what I want to do is dive in with you. I would love to hear your thoughts. First of all, just tell us your idea, like defining it, outside the typical definition of it being very short. Tell us about Flash, how it is different for you versus writing longer, why you consider it very much to be real writing versus equating length with real writing, and what makes you love it and use it as your main form of writing.
hmm We often hear that when we go into academia of like, is Flash real writing because it's so short? And a lot of people have this assumption that just because it is so short, it's easier to write. And that is not true at all because Like, for example, with a novel, you have all this time to go into details about, oh, what's in the room? What is the character wearing? Oh, what does it look like outside? And those elements, though they can add to the story, you don't have time in Flash to analyze all those different elements coming together. So for me, Flash is more about the moment in the story, and that's what I love about Flash so much is because it's the writer's conscious decision to pick what moment or what series of events to focus on and present to their readers. And all of that's done either in one word or up to 1,000 words. And lit mags, it'll vary. That's why you read the guidelines for literary magazines. Very important, read the guidelines, because some literary magazines say that Flash can be up to 1,500 words. Some will say Flash is like the max for them would be 400 or 500 words. So it all just depends. And a lot of people are like, how can a story be one word? And I'm like, that's where the title comes in, because a lot of lit mags will say the title doesn't count in the word count. So that's how a flash can be have this really long title that's actually the story. And then the one word is like the conclusion, the ending, the shift, everything about it. So that's how the flash can become this one word. And that's how we have all these different elements coming in together that make Flash so complicated because we do have that one moment or series of events. We do have that shift. And what I mean by the shift is that that's the point where the character is either changed for better or worse, or where something has happened and there's no point of return, or finally it's something about the setting that has just changed completely and that impacts the way the character either views the world or how the characters, plural, see themselves, see each other. Something is being revealed and they can't take it back. So either things have to change for the character or they can remain the same, but then we have to learn why they're remaining the same and also how does that impact character. So that's really difficult to do in 4 pages double spaced. You have to have this whole movement of something happening, something changing, and something impacting the character within 4 pages. And I think that's also one of the magics of Flash. And then you can start playing with form. You can create puzzles, do this with receipts, and that complicates it even more. So there's a lot of room to play.
I love that. And my students often think, oh, short is
Mhm.
easier. And they really quickly discover it's hard to write short well, right? And the more we write short, I think it helps us with intentionality in our longer work as well. So I'm a huge fan. And I think that is a great transition into the next question. And we got to talk about these worn bodies, the story, like
Hmm.
this, the symbol of the whole collection. I'm so glad you read it tonight, so everyone could really be immersed in it. It's really cool to hear you read it out loud as well. Um, and that story, which was the first story I read. I mean, I always do that. If there's a collection, I go right to the story that the collection is named after. So that was the first one I read, and then I went back and read the whole book. That is a powerful punch of character-driven storytelling. And what I wrote to you, as I said, it would seem impossible to approach the immediate post-Civil War period in Flash. Like, how could someone do that? How could it be effective? How could you show readers all of the critical social and cultural layering and bring this protagonist and an antagonist as well to life? How could you do it? And you did it. You did it in 4 pages. So talk to us. I'm going to go through a few questions. I'll go one at a time. Let's start with Maddie. Where did Maddie come from?
Maddie is actually like a combination of multiple characters that I have stuffed into this one character because I didn't know where else they would fit. So she's multiple personalities that all just work seamlessly together because they all have one common goal, and that is to get out. Maddie has had so much taken from her, and one character had their mother taken, one character had the father taken, one character had their husband taken. And I'm like, what if I just focus on putting all of that into this one character and have her have lost so much, and yet for some reason she is choosing to stay until she no longer chooses to stay. And we see that moment in the story where Mistress Whitaker says the name of her husband, and she is like, ma'am. No, you do not say my husband's name as a threat. You do not speak his name to me and expect me to just stand here and stay with you while I've been waiting all this time for him to come back to me. So it's also that realization that she has to get out. He's probably not coming back because as readers, we know what happens during war, and especially that war in particular, what it costs so many people in so many different ways. And I think also to go back to the importance of flash and form, there's a lot that we can leave out in the short form because we can trust our readers to assume about the content that we have chosen to leave out. I know a lot of people are taught about these different wars and they know what these wars have cost different individuals. And so I don't need to go into all this detail about what has happened to her husband and to all the men. I can just put in these small details like there's a wagon with the dead bodies coming through. They've started taking the silverware in order to be able to get out. There's the freedom papers. And then that places my reader in this time period and also grounds them in the moment of the flash that's taken place, but also allows them to think about all the possibilities of what happened to Maddie's husband.
Okay, so that was just for everyone here, a 60-second like craft lesson in historical fiction that really you would normally get a 2-hour lesson of. That was so beautifully said. And I recently actually have been attending a couple of historical fiction workshops because I'm very interested in it and don't have a lot of experience. And you just like summed it up so perfectly. So anyways, chef's kiss, amazing. Thank you, incredible.
Thank you.
But back to the story itself. Seriously, that was so great. That was so good. But so one thing about this story when you read it, and then when we heard you read it, is there is just an enormous amount of love that we can feel from you for this protagonist. It is like drenching the pages. And you really did layer her in so many amazing ways. Um, and it feels like you read a novel at the end of 4 pages. So I have to ask, have you ever wanted to revisit? Have you ever thought about lengthening? Have you ever thought about just going longer with this particular story or this particular protagonist?
So this is the end of Maddie's story. I'm sorry. She lives in this story and this is as far as she goes. This was also, however, during the time I was doing the Tyne series. For those that don't know, I have a few stories that's about this character named Tyne and his daughter. And it's also the slave pieces. The first one was published in flashback fiction, and I was following that for a while. And then, as sometimes it happens, writers burn out. The novel ideas just stop. And that's what happened. And in a good way, that was positive for my writing experience because then it allowed me room to explore other avenues in my writing. And that's how the collection was born because I was experimenting with other kinds of writing and form bending and other characters. So it was really freeing to put that idea away, but also in many different ways, that idea has come back. So there might be a historical fiction novel in me. There will definitely be more historical flash coming from me eventually, but there might be a historical fiction novel in the future. Who knows?
Okay, you heard it here. You heard it here first, everybody.
Be all exclusive.
We all heard it. So we're going to bug you about it. Um, this story in particular, last question, and then we'll keep going. I just love the story. Why did this story become the title and thus the symbol of the whole collection?
Yeah, so I chose this one to be the name of the collection. One, I just like the sound of these worn bodies, but also I feel like it set up the tone because even though we're presented with two different characters, one the assumed protagonist and the other the assumed antagonist, both of these women have experienced something awful in the loss of children, of husbands. They've both experienced death. And I learned in writing that when we present an antagonist, we have to complicate the antagonist in some type of way. We can't just hate the antagonist because then they become very flat on the page. It's just like, oh God, here they come again. Let me just go see how the protagonist deals with this character and then we can move on. And I did not want that for Mrs. Whitaker. I wanted her to have a point of view where, yes, we know we are assumed to dislike her, but also I wanted her to have gone through something, and we see that she is broken in the beginning because she just sits on the porch and waits for these men who are definitely not coming back. And then we have the historical context once again. Women in the South during that time did not have a lot of power without a husband. All of her stuff has been taken. There have been raids. Her fan that she used to cover her mouth with has just been stolen because the soldier was like, I'm going to take this and I'm going to take it with me. So her house has been broken into. All of her stuff is gone. All of that builds to her character and why she doesn't want to admit that she needs Maddie, but we get this sense toward the end when she grabs Maddie's hand to while Maddie is trying to leave that she really does need Maddie. This is the last person on her property that she needs, and she holds on to her. And meanwhile, we have Maddie who is staying because she feels this sort of obligation and she has nowhere else to go. And she's a black woman in the Civil War South. And what is she going to do by herself until she hears Mrs. Whitaker say her husband's name? And she's like, I have my parents, all that's left of them that I know of, in my pockets, represented as two rocks. My husband has not come back to claim me. He might not be coming back at all, and it's time for me to leave because this woman has pushed me to my limit. So I like the pull and push of these two characters separating, and that's what I wanted to illustrate throughout this collection are women who are either resisting the urge to become who they truly believe they are versus the women or femme characters who are fully themselves, and it either works for them or in some ways it doesn't. Like we have one woman who literally takes on the persona of her sister after her sister dies, and then we have another woman who identifies her exes as different beverages while at their funeral. So we have all of these different ways that we identify these femme characters, and it's either them trying to escape what is assumed of them, or either they're staying and rooted and they have to deal with the consequences of that.
Thank you. All
Mhm.
right. We have our first question from the chat, and then we'll get back to mine. And this is a great question. I'm so glad. But I don't know how to say this person's name, and I feel terrible. If you can see in the chat, I don't want to mispronounce someone's name because I'm terrible about names. So I'm just going to read this wonderful question. How do you demarcate the boundaries between flash fiction and prose poetry? I'm impressed by your meticulous attention to musicality, imagery, and metaphor. So true. So true. I'm also asking you this because I'm often wrestling to understand the nature of what I'm writing as it is at the crossroads of fiction and poetry. And that can become even more problematic when I'm trying to decide which genre I should be submitting this kind of hybrid work. So and I have a question for you about this too. So let's just go right into it. How do you define your work in terms of genre, and where do you think the boundary is between flash and prose poetry?
Yeah, so when I teach flash fiction classes, I always define the difference between flash and prose poetry because there is a fine line, and sometimes we stumble over it, even writing flash. And I define prose poetry as the writer looking through the window and observing what's going on. And they write about that moment that they're seeing, versus flash fiction puts the reader in that moment. And we're experiencing that moment as our characters are experiencing it. So one keeps us at a distance and we see the whole thing unfolding, but we don't know all the inner workings of it. Versus Flash gives us time to hear the dialogue, gives us time to nestle into these characters, and then we can identify with them better. And then we can actually become the characters because we're no longer the observer, we're actually in that scene. So that's how I kind of separate Flash from prose poetry. In my own Flash, how I identify myself, I'm strictly a Flash writer. Like I applaud poets, I celebrate them. I don't think I write poetry. I've been told my writing is very lyrical. I like how it sounds to my ear when I read it out loud, and I promise you, these are not the first drafts of these stories. They did not all come out of me sounding like this. And I just keep playing with the words. I keep playing with sentence structure. I like, as you could tell, I like really long run-on sentences where apparently I don't get a chance to breathe while reading. And sometimes that works in my favor, sometimes it doesn't. So I like to keep playing with form and structure in Flash to find out what sounds nice to the ear, but also what gets the story across.
Excellent. Thank you. Good question. And it covered one of my questions as well. So there we go. Um, Whenever I'm talking to an author of a prose collection, short
Mhm.
stories, essays, whatever, I always want to talk about the process of selecting stories or pieces and ordering them because it is so complicated. It is so layered. There's so many parts to it. And you had 60 pieces in this because it's Flash. So to me, it's just an enormous task. So talk to us a little bit, please, about how you chose which stories would and wouldn't go in to the collection, and then how you went about ordering 60 stories.
Yes, so the order actually fell into place rather nicely. And I knew that I wanted to start with a micro because I wanted to introduce Flash for what it could be. I wanted people to turn to the first page and be like, oh, it's a paragraph long. And I'm like, yes, because that's what Flash can be. It doesn't have to be the longer story, it can just be compacted into a paragraph. And also, I wanted the first story to be told from a younger point of view because that's the point of view that, in my opinion, is underutilized in storytelling. And then first person plural is also very underutilized in storytelling. And I wanted all of these elements to come together and just kind of shake readers and be like, look at this beautiful form. Why not try it yourself? This is such a great story. Like, please just dive into this collection with me and take a moment to realize all the things that Flash can be. And then for the final story, shout out to Sarah Freely, where Define a Good Woman started in her workshop. And it actually was a lot shorter when I wrote it for her workshop because it was a Flash workshop. And I expanded it a little bit more so it became a full-fledged Flash. And I just wanted to end with that one because I believe Define a Good Woman speaks to how women cannot be defined, especially not in like one word or in simple terms, because we contain multitudes. And that's how the story is expressing yourself. You have a very like, oh, Wilma Flintstone is this supposed housewife that takes care of her husband and she takes care of her child. And she gets to gib gab with her neighbor. And she's just like this giggly personality that a lot of people are familiar with. And then you pair her with a woman who was really struggling with mental illness and depression and trying to keep up with this perspective of trying to keep up with Wilma Flintstone and who Wilma Flintstone is. And as we continue reading this story, Wilma Flintstone has a moment where she's like, I'm going bowling. My husband, Fred, is like taking me out again to a place I don't want to be. Why can't we consider my feelings in this? And we see that pair nicely with the wife who's like, my parents don't understand what I'm going through. And we've all have that moment where the people in our lives may not necessarily understand what we're going through. And then it's about the choice of whether they stay and try to support us or not. So that's what I wanted to explore in the final story of the collection. And then, of course, these worn bodies would have to be in the middle because one, it holds so much weight within the story, and I wanted to ground the collection. For the other stories, I went to different panels. I asked other authors how they sorted their collections and how they picked what goes where and stuff. Some people wrote it on post-it notes and put it on the wall and kept shuffling. I don't have that many post-it notes for Flash, and I don't have enough wall space in my house for that. And so that was not an option for me. Another person said they wrote it on um, index cards and just threw them up in the air. And wherever they landed, that's how they ordered the collection. That would try my nerves. That's like 52 or how many cards are in a deck, like 52 card pickup or whatever the game is called. Like, no, that's a trick of the mind for me. That wouldn't work. So what I did was I put all the story titles in a Word document. I just listed them and then I color coded them by length And then I put in parentheses what point of view the story was told from, because I didn't want all the micros to be together and I didn't want all the longer stories together. So I tried to really break it up like a micro, a longer story, a medium story, a micro, a longer story, two small stories, a medium story, a longer story, that way, in order to make sure that my readers were not getting all the longer stories at once, all the micros just crashed into each other, and then I was left with all the medium stories somewhere scattered throughout the collection.
That's so helpful. It's sometimes you just have to picture it, like the patterns of it, of like the voice of each story. So that's so interesting. And I was really wondering because when I did an anthology with lots and lots of stories, it probably took me longer to order them than it did to actually edit the stories, to be perfectly honest. So I was
Mhm.
wondering about your process there. And were there any stories that you did not include? And if so, why?
Yes, so unfortunately, the Pudding Cup story, which has been published in the offing, I hope it's the offing, uh, it was not able to be included in the collection because of formatting. That's the one told in a Venn diagram. And so it would be too hard for people to read on the page. And so we had to cut that one. There were a few others that when I read the collection again, they didn't really match the tone of the overall collection. So I took them out. And then also, when I first started working on this collection, I had boys in it. Like I thought, oh, this is gonna be a collection of Flash. Like, let's just throw everybody in here. And I was like, I have a lot of Flash stories told from the perspective of femme characters. And I want to keep it that way because I want to make sure that they have room for their stories and they're not being overshadowed by anybody else's stories. So I cut them in.
That's really helpful to know. I know there are people here who write a lot of short stories who are thinking about collections. So it always really helps to hear different perspectives on how to go about ordering it. Um, in the chat, one of the audience members asks, is there one piece in this collection that you feel most represents you as a writer?
Ooh. Oh, there are so many. But I believe it would be definitely my more form-bending ones. And the two that come to mind are Vagabond Mannequin and How We Survive. Vagabond Mannequin is one of my favorites and is also probably my most well-known story that was published first in Jellyfish Review and is now in the collection. But that one really introduced me to the child narrator as such a powerful and moving voice, but also the courage to play with form, thanks to Kathy Fish and her Fast Flash workshops, plugging that. And so it really also challenged me to think about all the different ways that we can view Flash and also the patience of trying to make form work with story. And sometimes it doesn't, but with Vagabond Mannequin, it did very, very nicely. And I'm appreciative of that story. And then also How We Survive, which was also written during my whole apocalypse phase during COVID. And so I really love that story because it takes so many unexpected turns, but also has a character who is not a main character. She is a background character, this mannequin named Lorraine, who everyone has just been drawn to, who I just really loved. I'm like, she's weird. I like her. Let's see what happens. And it's just this great romance story between one of the characters and this mannequin, but also a breakup story between these two characters who are supposed to be the last people on Earth, and how you don't have to tell a breakup story that just happens between two people. Maybe it happens because of the world that they live in, or maybe it's because one of them just falls in love with a mannequin.
There you go. That should be the end right there. That
Yeah.
should be excellent. I teach both of those stories, so that I like love to hear that because
No, thank you.
your work is really useful in the classroom. In addition to being a delight to read, it is, I use it regularly, both to teach form and then to teach compact, precise prose. So yeah, I think those are perfect examples. If I was going to say to someone, this would be representative of this author's work, I think that makes so much sense. So, um, which leads into like going back to that question, when you said, I'm a flash fiction writer, that's what I am. Though we do know that there's the potential for historical novel. Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying that as well. But when you were talking about being a flash fiction writer, let's go even further with that of looking at what you write, because you don't just write like literary fiction, right? You explore genre all over the place. You know, there's speculative, there's historical, I mean, there's so many different ways. You use hermit crab, you use borrowed forms. If you had to put your book on a shelf, you know, at Barnes and Noble, what shelf would it go on?
Hmm. New releases table?
Of course, bestsellers, we know, award winners, yes.
Yeah,
But
you know,
in
award
terms of like,
winners,
you know,
Pulitzer
what it
Prize.
go?
I just go into Barnes and Noble and just stick it with the Pulitzer Prize books. It's fine. But no, if I don't know what shelf I would be on because I like to write in so many different genres and so many different forms. If Barnes and Noble just had an experimental shelf or like an unclassified shelf, I would just be there, like hanging out and be like, "Hey, everybody, if you're looking for something different or something that contains multitudes, here it is." Like, I
They should
don't
have
like
that. They should
I
have that
don't like
shelf.
staying in one lane too long. Like I think that's also why I don't have a novel is because I can't stay in one lane too long and I like bounce around so often. So maybe once I settle, then something will happen.
Well, I had the privilege of one of your stories from the collection of publishing Abernathy resume, right?
Yeah.
For Porcupine Lit, an education-focused literary journal. And it won Best of the Net. And that
Yes.
was an entire story told through a resume. And when
Mhm.
I show that to students, they're just like, what? And at first they're like, what am I even reading? And I'm like, read the whole thing. I don't even introduce it. I say, just read this. Just read it. And at the
Mhm.
end, I tell them it's a short story. And they're like, you know, and so, you know, and in their head, it's almost speculative. You know, it's historical. It's all these different things wrapped in one. And so it's exciting. And there really should be an experimental section. There should be a shelf for that work.
They should.
I
And you
agree.
wouldn't believe how many people ask me, like, is Sybil Abernathy real? Like, is this actually her resume? And I was like, y'all, I promise she is a character. Like, this is not someone's resume. I just took and like put it on the page and was like, I'm gonna send it to the slip bag.
No, but it has that beautiful thing that really good short stories have, that sometimes they feel like essays. They feel
Mhm.
so true. And I don't think that people always understand that fiction, even though it's fiction, should be true on some level. It feels true, like you are talking truthfully in this fictional way. And I think people don't realize that that piece reads like creative nonfiction. That's how real you made it. And that's just a testament to the piece. That's why the piece got Best of Net, right? So yeah. That's my plug for Porcupine. We had it first. It was very exciting. So, keep those questions coming in the chat as well. A good question here. Do you write using an outline? And if not, what is your pre-writing technique?
Oh, I can't outline flash fiction because then I will just write the flash fiction. Outlines, I think are, in my personal opinion, I can only outline if I'm doing something longer because then I just write the story if I try to outline a flash. Like if I try to outline a paragraph, I might as well just dive into the story right away. I also, just a quick tip, I write everything by hand. So all of these stories in here, once upon a time, appeared on a piece of paper. And I write in pencil so I can erase. I can't write in pen because, like I always like to joke, I have commitment issues and just seeing something just scratched out bugs me for some reason. I'm like, what if I need that later? And then it's just like a scratched out ink blot on my page. So yes, I write everything by hand and I write it in pencil. I will also say that I am not the best at revising. I find revision the hardest part of being a writer, and that surprises a lot of people. Like, creating the story is the hardest part. And I'm like, once I have the beginning, I'm set. Like, I'm ready to dive into the story as soon as I have that opening. And then I tend to like slide the story away from me because it's perfect and I don't want to read it again and realize that there are mistakes and there's a character that got dropped and I spelled something wrong and I need to go fix all these errors. And so I just put it away for a bit. And then when I slowly build up the courage to go back and edit and revise the story, and it's a process, y'all. Like I really have to sit and be like, do I want to revise today? Or do I want to play with this new shiny story idea and see if I can get it on the page? And so I have a friend, her name's Elizabeth Burton, and she like pushes me to revise. And it's very helpful to have writing friends that know your weaknesses or know what you avoid in writing and who's like, you really need to go and revise. Like, stop writing new stuff for a minute and just go revise what you have. And so she pushes me to go do that. And what I do is that I read the story over again, and then I put it away, and then I rewrite it and see what parts I remember and what I don't remember clearly did not leave an impression on me. And then I read them both again and see, oh, did I need that part that I left out? And if so, why didn't it leave an impression on me the first time I read it again? And I try to work it back into the story, or I leave it out and retell it in a different way.
Okay then. I'm supposed to be in the audience Q&A now. So everyone put your questions in. We have just like 5 more minutes. But while I'm waiting for someone got me. I was about to dive into one more of my questions, but that's all right. It is time for the audience. I could talk to you for hours for real, Avitus. All right. How do you approach punctuation and formatting? Do you see them as the reader's portal to your literal voice and rhythm, or do you totally surrender to their reading?
Hmm.
I've never had that question before. This is a
That's
brand
a
new question.
that's a good
I'm
one.
into it. Punctuation formatting. Talk to us about how you approach that.
Yeah, punctuation. I love a comma too much. So, like, you would the first drafts are like, I need a comma, I need a comma, 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 comma. Like, I put all the commas in this story, and then I read it again, and I'm like, I'm taking way too many pauses. Like, I could have read that sentence and been done. And like, also, like I said, I do love a really long sentence. And so when I read it out loud, sometimes I do run out of breath and I'm like, is it too long? Probably not. I just need better
No.
breath control. And so I just keep reading it out loud to figure out when the comma is too much or when the sentence is way too long. And then also, this is what my writer friends are for. I'll send them the rough draft, probably like the second or third draft. Nobody sees the first draft. And then I'll ask them, hey, what do you think? And then those that know my writing will be like, Avitus, can we talk about this really long sentence and how it's so long that it's half a page? Like, we need to chop this up. Or sometimes they'll be like, you have way too many line breaks. Or sometimes they're like, why did you stop with the line breaks? So sometimes it's also just a real balance. Like, for one, I like how stories look on the page as well as sound on the page, which means lots of line breaks at times. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. So it's really just trying to figure out from my perspective, what I'm looking for, but then also how it might be heard from the reader's perspective. Like, I don't want a reader who has to sit there and try to figure out, okay, is here where I take a pause, or is here where the sentence ends, or is here where I'm going to jump into a different scene or something that happening on the page. I want them to understand what I'm doing, but in my own voice, if that makes sense.
Well, it sounds like it's all about intentionality, like
Hmm.
real, and that's, one of the reasons I teach your work is because of your precision. And like that kind of intentionality is what we strive for, no matter what genre we're writing. It's like everything is on purpose. And so punctuation, similarly, like a really long sentence can be so effective if we're doing it on
Hmm.
purpose and we want that effect, right? And so that's exactly what you're saying. It's really cool stuff. All right. Well, we don't have a lot of time there, because we're supposed to be done. But I'm gonna ask one last question from the audience because it's a cool one that I don't ever ask. So I'm psyched. Do you listen to any music when you write? And if so, what is it?
Ooh, unfortunately, I do not. I need to write in silence.
I'm the same. Yeah,
If
yeah.
I listen to music, I will just start writing the lyrics. If it's a song with words, like I'll just be la 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 da 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 da, and the beat goes on. Like it's just like I start writing the lyrics. Or if it's just the music, like no words in the song that's playing, I'll just sit there and listen to the song. Like I find it too much of a distraction. What I do when I like to be by a window. I'm by a window right now. as I'm doing this craft chat with you all. And I just like take moments to enjoy the scenery. And my friend Mario thinks I live in the wood because I'm always taking pictures of animals in my backyard. Like, I swear to God, I don't live in the woods. But like sometimes the occasional squirrel will stop by. I've had blue jays now stop by, cardinals. There's a whole family of geese. There's actually like a gang war happening with the geese in the backyard. So that's fun to watch
Well, the
sometimes.
geese are mean, so that actually tracks, okay?
Yeah, like they're terrifying, but also apparently they treat everybody like that. So now I don't feel like I've been personally attacked by a geese. And I also now the foxes are coming out. So now it's like this whole thing. It was like, oh, the goslings are here, the foxes are here. Gertie the groundhog is back. And so like all of this life is happening outside of my window. And it's just like a nice pause from writing to take a moment to admire the lives of these animals.
It's like Disney princess mode. That's your
Yep.
soundtrack for this. It's amazing. All right, so I have a million more questions, but we don't have time because you're wonderful. Could you please hold up your book for us? So
Yeah.
everyone, if you don't have this book, you must order it. I think we're putting the link in the chat. Is that right? Or get it from your local bookstore or get it from Bookshop. It's such a good book, and you will read it really fast because I could not put it down. Like 2 days, boom. I read the whole thing. I could not stop reading. So thank you for this time today, Avitus. It was such a joy, and I can't wait for your historical novel. So hey.
Like, why did I say that? Now I gotta write it.
Thank you so much to both of you. Thank you to everyone who came out. This was beautiful and lovely. Hannah, anytime you want to host, please come back. Avitus, anytime you want to have a book and share it with us, you are more than always welcome to be part of the Writer's Center. And thanks to everyone who came out this evening, and we'll see you all again next time. Thank you.